Hello and welcome to the International Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you some of the major news developments of the day. Our first story is about Libya, where a civil war is going on and there's talks of truce. At the same time, Egypt has also indicated that it might militarily intervene. To discuss the situation, we have with us Abdul. Abdul, thank you for joining us. So, we know that the civil war began last year and General Khalifa Haftar's forces are on the verge of taking Tripoli and Misrata, the last cities left with the GNA, the Government of National Accord, which is supported by the international community, so to speak, at least officially supported. And last month we saw that the GNA had signed an agreement with Turkey. Turkey had indicated that it was willing to send troops, and some troops have already arrived. So it is in this context that there is talks of truce. So could you tell us how much this is actually likely to happen, and what are the reasons behind this happening now?
It is very difficult to say whether it will happen or not, but given the situations and given the parties involved, Turkey is one of the, you can say, initiators of this ceasefire thing, and Russia, which is at least last few months, we have seen a very aggressive diplomatic interventions in the entire Middle East region.
Right.
So, because Russia is a heavyweight involved in this particular development, I think the possibility of it becoming a reality is higher for two reasons. First, this is a part of the larger developments, larger talks which are happening under the purview of United Nations. As we know, there is a conference proposed in Berlin this month only. And yesterday, Merkel and Putin had a joint press conference in which they said that the ceasefire proposals are part of the UN-led negotiations.
Right.
So because it is happening in that particular context where there was already a possibility of some kind of agreement, I think this has a possibility. The only thing which can go against is how other regional powers are playing into it.
Right.
How, for example, as you mentioned, Egypt's yesterday, the Egyptian Speaker of Egyptian Parliament said that we will be sending our troops to Libya as well. Which I think was a response to the Turkish action. So, since last day, in one day, things have changed a lot, and I think the possibility of peace is greater.
Right. So this is going to be a very tenuous peace because Khalifa Haftar's soldiers actually control a large part of Libya, and the government, although like I said, it's internationally supported, it barely controls any territory.
True.
So, from your evaluation of the situation, is it likely to be status quo, or is there going to be some attempt to bring the two forces together to form another government of national accord? What are the possibilities?
That is a very difficult thing to talk about because as we know, as you rightly pointed out, that majority of the territory in Libya and the oil producing territories, particularly the oil fields, are under the control of Khalifa Haftar. And it seemed that the defense of Tripoli was not very strong, particularly after the fall of Sirte. So, on 6th of January. After that, the only saving grace was Turkey.
Right.
Whether the Turkish forces will be able to help kind of create a kind of buffer between the GNA, whatever militias they have, weak militias they have, and the Khalifa Haftar forces. The only thing which will, you can say, compel Khalifa Haftar to negotiate, I think that is the only thing which has played a role, is the involvement of Turkey. And because Turkey is very strongly behind the GNA government, I think there will be some kind of attempt to create a common ground as it was in 2014. As we all know, the GNA came into existence primarily because of the UN-led initiative in which all the warring factions in Libya agreed to kind of have elections and all. After that, they had disagreements.
Right.
But I think the same experiments will be repeated.
Right. And we can't really see this situation without looking at Syria too, where again Russia and Turkey have played a key role in sort of, it's a very complicated situation just as in Libya. But what this also points to is that in the past couple of years, months, and at least last 1 year, as you pointed out, Russia has emerged as possibly one of the biggest players in this region.
Yeah.
And it has a stake everywhere. It has good relations with almost all the forces who are against each other. So this is actually another huge step as far as Russian diplomacy is concerned in re-establishing its zone of influence.
Agreed. You will see two things have happened. Not only the Russians have aggressively intervened in the region, and as you said, Syria and Libya and Iran also, they are also involved in that particular country, but also the Trump's policy. It seems that there is no direction to it, and that the lack of direction, the lack of vision, which earlier imperialist leaders had, is basically responsible for providing that space, open space, which Russia has been very creative in basically exploiting.
Right.
So you can say because the US is not able to intervene decisively, and there is a vacuum, that vacuum is filled by Russia. And that thing, that is good for the reason, if you ask me.
Thank you so much, Abdul. We move on to our next story. On January 11th, the far-right Venezuelan opposition leader, Juan Guaido, declared his intention to silence the state-owned media outlet Telesur by taking over it, claiming that it supports terrorists. Guaido said that in the next few days, we keep moving forward. Tomorrow, we'll announce the steps to recover the Telesur signal in the continent and keep an eye on where and when we are going to hold a session of the National Assembly to open the doors of the palace and that of Miraflores Palace, which is the government office, tweeted Guaido. Earlier during the day, in a rally in Caracas, while addressing his supporters, Guaido said that he was going to block the channel's ability to report, claiming that it lies and spreads misinformation. Telesur is a left-wing Latin American television channel and an online news network with its headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. It was founded in 2005 with the inspiration of Commander Hugo Chavez and with the collaboration of the governments of Venezuela, Uruguay, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Bolivia as an alternative to mainstream media narratives. Guaido's threat came days after he lost his position as the president of the National Assembly. On January 5th, as per the Venezuelan constitution, the National Assembly held the annual elections to select a new governing board. With a vote share of 81 to 150 legislators, Luis Parra of the center-right Justice First Party was elected as the new president of the Venezuelan parliament for the period of 2020 to 21. However, Guaido and his supporters rejected these results and installed a parallel parliament in the office of the opposition newspaper El Nacional. Guaido justified his rejection of the results, claiming that the elections were fraudulent because the necessary quorum was not reached, and that he was allegedly barred from entering parliament by security forces. In contrast to his claims, Telesur, among other media outlets, reported the reality of the event and showed that how, at first, he had decided not to enter the headquarters because the group of deputies he came along with were not allowed to. Since then, Guaido has been attacking the government and Telesur relentlessly. That's all we have in this episode of the International Daily Roundup. To know more about these stories, visit our website peoplesdispatch.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching.
Que cantar, que vamos a triunfar, avanza ya.